Starting Pitcher Week continues here on Beat the Shift with part 2 of our episode with Nick Pollack of Pitcher List. We'll deep dive through a ton of undervalued pitchers, which ATC Projections identifies, and we'll give our take on the best spots to pick up a starter. Part 2 of our starting pitcher preview coming up next here on Beat the Shift. I do want to get into the pitchers because we have a lot of people. Now, we've talked about some of them, so some of these we're just going to glance over, and some of them we'll talk about a little more in depth. But here's the ATC pitchers that we have as undervalued, and I'm wondering what Nick thinks on them, and what Ruvain and I were going to comment as well. Number one pitcher I find undervalued here at the top here is Framber Valdez. I see Framber Valdez on this list the last couple of years in a row. His roto values over the last 5 years, 10, 18, 18, 18, 20. I don't know, but I like pitchers, or I like players in general that have a good floor, that you're reliable to get stuff. Framber Valdez is available in the 5th round. I'm actually comfortable taking him as my ace because of what he can do. To me, he's got 200K upside. To me, he's got sub-3 ERA upside. ATC's not even projecting him to do either, and he's a bargain with that. So if he actually gets his upside, which I think is more likely than the downside, bad performance downside, injury risk is always there, I think he's a bargain. And that's, I'm comfortable taking Framber Valdez as my ace. Do you agree, Nick?
No.
Okay. What's the hole? What's the chink in the armor?
No, I'm just messing around. Okay, if you guys know Jason Collette, if you don't, you're doing it wrong, guys. But Jason Collette and I have had this bet about Cole Reagans versus Framber Valdez entering last year. And after every single start that either of them made, if Reagans had a good one, I'd send it to him. If Reagans had a bad one, he'd send it to me, and so on. And with Framber Valdez too. And by July 3rd, man, was I feeling good. Oh my gosh. This guy, Framber Valdez, what does he think he's doing? 3.84 ERA, 130 whip, and a 19% strikeout rate for Framber Valdez through his first 15 starts of the season. Jason,
injured,
oh my
though.
gosh, he stopped texting.
Pitching hurt.
It was done. But then what happens? Framber Valdez, after July 4th, so it's July 4th start, after that, 191 ERA and a .89 whip with a 30% strikeout rate in 13 starts. He just saved your season, and he saved his own season. And I see this a lot. Blake Snell is the most famous one in my view. Freddie Peralta has done it too in the past. But I see it from other guys that they would say, "Oh man, a really good second half. That's really going to pull in for the next year or so." It's weird. It is usually not something that we can bank on. And for this, it was all of a sudden the curveball waking up in a massive way. This was the best curveball I've ever seen.
But wasn't he
Framber
hurt a little
Valdez.
bit to start the year? Like, isn't that the explanation? Yeah. Like, maybe you can say that he overdid it in the second half, but the underperformance in the first half, wasn't it partially injury related? I
imagine something. I didn't hear about the injury thing. That would make sense. I don't think that Framber Valdez is a 3.84 ERA with a 130 whip and a 19% strikeout rate. I think the point I'm trying to make here is that it was so good of a run. A 191 ERA and a .89 whip. That is just so what? He's not supposed to do that. He's not supposed to be anywhere close to that. And I see Framber Valdez as this guy with a sinker that is susceptible to hits. It always has been. Who's losing now Alex Bregman. He's only good infield defender. And if you didn't notice that Framber Valdez had a 60-plus ground ball rate in 2022, went underneath 50 or underneath 60 for the first time in ages in 23, went back up as he found the sink again on the sinker in 2024. And he's going to continue to get those ground balls. You're losing Bregman. You're probably not going to have the same curveball that you had at the end of last year. And that's it. That's Valdez. I don't think that he's going to be a bad ad for your team at all. I think he's going to be generally helpful. Wins are going to be there for the most part, all of that. But I don't think that Valdez is truly this like SP1 ace. I can't get behind that. I think that it's a curveball that is a little volatile. The sinker is always going to have its days where it's just game. Well, already all these balls went through pretty easily. The hit per nine is going to go up. He hasn't been a low walk guy traditionally.
What's the ERA and WHIP you're going to project for him though?
Oh man. Yeah. So Valdez. This is the thing about it is like I can't tell you. I have no idea. Like it could go. It can be a large variance here for Valdez, and I'll do this. I'll put a projection. This is just me mentally, but I guess I'm getting at like, do you just want a guy that you just put in and just don't think about the entire year? As a manager, I can't do that. I can't, and I think you kind of have to with Valdez because I ultimately do think it's going to end up like a 3.6 ERA, a 1.17, 1.20.
3.6 ERA. I will bet you the
like
under
that.
on
Yeah.
that one.
I know that sounds ridiculous, but I don't think.
Okay,
it's
$1 board bet on that. What say you, Nick Pollack?
What would you think would be a fair one?
Well,
fair
since
projection?
the ATC projections are at almost 3.35, and you said 3.65, let's cut it at 3.45. What do you think?
Beautiful. I'm in because
Wait,
I don't
be-
think
be-
it's
be-
being understood
hold
enough
on,
is the
hold on.
loss of Bregman.
Okay.
You're getting Paredes back, who's a worse defender at third. None of those guys are good infield defenders.
Okay, is this going to change your mind, though? His career ERA is 3.3, a career RIP of 1.2, and he hasn't had anything higher than that since 2021. Now, you mentioned about the
understand.
ground balls. I understand that. But he also had the lowest barrel percentage of his career last year. And I think you're 100% right. It all matters about the defense behind him. They said they're even thinking of moving Altuve to play left field a little bit. I don't know what they're thinking, really. But I think that Framber Valdez is pretty safe to get below a 3.45. So if I had to take the under, I think I'll take the under just because his career is telling me, and as long as he's healthy, as long as he's in the forearm issue doesn't come up again like it did I think it came up around late April last year, and everyone was worried, are we gonna have to drop him? What are we gonna have to do? But then I think he went on the IL for a little bit, then came off, and they think he needed surgery, but he ended up not, and he pitched through it. So as long as he's healthy, and as long as the infield defense is halfway serviceable, because he had a 60% ground ball rate last year. So as long as it's serviceable, then I think there's the under of 3.45 should be fine.
All right, we're going to move on to another pitcher, but we've got our second board bet of the year for $1, 3.45.
Let's do it.
Framber Valdez.
Yeah.
Okay.
Minimum how many innings?
Let's go minimum 50.
50.
Oh, come on.
What do you want, 100? 100 innings?
Yeah, 100.
Minimum 100, otherwise the push, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we got
Beautiful.
it. All right, next one. Now, we've talked about him before, so I'm going to just very quickly. Tyler Glass. Now, Tyler, he's coming up as a huge bargain by ATC. And I have him projected just for 134 innings. As you said before, Nick, it's quality whenever he starts. So to me, if he can get over the 125 inning value, he's a profit right over there. So I don't see any reason why you wouldn't take him other than the health. Ruvain, a quick check. Is he healthy or not to start the year?
He is healthy. He said he had basically an almost completely a normal off season. He did throw 134 innings last year. He threw before the injury. He had 120 in 2023. So he can do it. But when pitchers are coming back from injury, you're always worried about that dreaded word you hear, setback. And with the way the Dodgers are built, they are going to be extra cautious, and they're going to make sure that he's healthy. So when it comes to 135 innings, I think that's about where he's going to go. But I mean, you never know with the Dodgers. We were talking about it before. I bet you can't name the 5 starting pitchers in the World Series for the Dodgers. They didn't have them because they don't necessarily need them to win, but they need them to get to where they're going. So they're gonna probably baby him as much as he can be babied, and we'll see how that works.
All right, quick yes or no, Nick, on Tyler Glass now.
I'm very much in because my understanding is that he's healthy right now, and then you get the roster spot later on. Also, I'm not changing the bet because I'm very much into my 3.45. Christian Walker is the first baseman now, much better defender than Jose
Yes.
Abreu and John Singleton. So at least he
Yes.
got. So that might even it out with my worries about the infield defense. I still think third base is more important, but still, that's
Everything's
something I should
important
have
in
noted.
its own way. Yeah. All right. Before the next one, we've got the Injury Guru's Trivia of the Week.
All right, so there's no Chris or Nick here because we're doing a pitcher trivia here, and we're going to be talking about the next pitcher,
pressure.
Logan Webb. So Logan Webb threw over 200 innings last year. I'm going to give you two questions. The first one is the easier one. Only 3 other pitchers threw over 200 innings last year. Who were they?
Tarek Skubal,
No.
he didn't.
No.
No, Zach Wheeler did.
Zach Wheeler's one.
Did he go exactly 200 innings? Oh gosh. Corbin Burns didn't hit it, did he?
No. I know the answer to
Who?
this one because I looked
I'm
it up.
sure you
before
do.
The show. Yeah.
Oh man,
Because you know where the trivia is going to be, so you kind of figured. What the
No,
question
no.
was gonna
I
be.
looked it up because I was doing research on Logan Webb, and there you go.
Okay.
You know. So.
Okay. So
the other one,
there are 2
did
others.
Logan Gilbert do it?
Yeah.
he did.
Logan. He was number 1.
And
Okay.
who was the third missing wheel here? That was actually the fourth. Who threw over 200 innings?
Wait. Logan Gilbert, Logan Webb.
Yes, Logan Gilbert,
Zach
Wheeler, Logan Webb, and one other player.
Oh, so not Gilbert.
No. Well, no, Gilbert did do it, but besides him, there's still one other player you're missing.
Oh, I see.
Pitchers in the same
Wait.
team as Cole Reagans.
No, Seth Lugo.
Seth
Yes.
Lugo did it. Yeah.
Yes. So that was the easy part of the question, but now the harder one. Logan Webb has thrown over 200 innings for 2 straight years. 2 pitchers did it over the years of 2022 and 2023. Who were they? Back-to-back seasons of 200 innings.
Oh.
In 2022 and 2023.
Yes.
Okay. Man, this is fun. I know that Wheeler didn't because it was a shortened one in the World Series run. I think it was. That might be. Oh no. Okay. I'm like,
Don't
it's so
let
weird because I
recency
never
bias- don't
focus
let
on that
recency
raw
bias.
number.
Don't let recency bias block you. in your-
2022. I'm trying to think. I know. Yeah. I can't remember.
Okay,
who
hold
did it.
on. I did Garrett Cole. No.
Yes. Garrett Cole is
Yes.
one.
Okay.
Now the second one is going to be harder to get.
Nola?
Okay.
No.
No.
I'll
It's
give
too
you a
good.
hint. I don't know. It should help you, but he pitched in
Oh,
the
Jose
NL
Barrios.
Central.
He pitched
AL
where?
Central?
NL Central.
Okay, so definitely not
NL
Barrios.
Central. Not on the Pirates. Not on the Cubs.
That's a good question.
think
Who was the
Brewers
last
did.
Pirate pitcher who did it?
NL Central. Brewers. Corbin Burnt. No, we said not Burns, right?
I'll give you another hint. Hopefully this will help. They play for the Cardinals.
Miles Michaelis.
Yes.
Oh wow. Jeez.
Yes. Those are the
Man,
two guys
I
who
was
did
right there too.
back-to-back.
I was literally just trying to remember what the fifth AL Central team was.
So just thinking
Oh,
about
man.
that, Logan Webb throwing 200 innings the last 2 seasons, and his rates, his walk rate, his strikeout rate, very similar in both years. He's throwing the sinker more, the changeup less, which is why he's getting through more innings. So just those reasons alone, along with how the stadium he's pitching in, and he's just something that you can rely on. And he actually said, I think, came out last year and the year before, saying that he wanted to pitch to 100 innings. He wanted to get to that mark. So this is the guy who's going to go out there and pitch and give you volume. And this is the type of volume that I'm talking about. If you earlier when you're talking about whether you want ratios or strikeouts, if you get this kind of volume that's not going to kill you and it'll stabilize everything, this is the guy who can almost anchor your rotation. What do you think?
even
Nick?
with the 123 whip last year, he turned in a $10 season. And this year his price tag is an auction equivalent of $15. So to me, $10 is like his downside, and his upside we saw was $20. So, I don't expect much profit from him, but if you want a reliable pitcher, I don't know. Logan Webb gives you reliability in innings. He's not going to give you a lot of strikeouts, but because of the volume of innings, he's getting the volume of strikeouts. And he lasts long in games, so he'll get wins. So, he pitches in a good park. That should keep the ERA down. So, I don't know. To me, it's a good pitcher to pick if you just want to have a steady Eddie that'll just give you bank in some value. No?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It is. I will mention again that the 123 whip is. It's really funny. Last year we were putting him in the top 15, saying he is completely safe, blah blah blah, and then $10 value, as you mentioned, when yeah, he was getting drafted so high, hurt you in whip and everything. It was a very weird year for his changeup. That changeup was being sought out by hitters. They were just looking for that pitch, righties and lefties combined, really. And the ICR, that is the contact allowed, oh my gosh, 53% ICR on this changeup. And remember that it used to be like 32% or something like that. To see such a massive jump in ideal contact from hitters on that changeup by right-handers, oh man, it went up to 41% against lefties. Still terrible. This should be amazing against lefties. It's a changeup, opposite-handed batters. So I really do think that's going to normalize a bit. I also keep seeing experimentation from Webb with his slider and his sweeper and trying to figure out what that third pitch really should be. We did see a cutter show up at the end of last year that was actually kind of effective against left-handers, which I'm curious to see if that carries over as well. But I love the fact that Logan Webb embraced going inside to right-handers with that sinker. That made it one of the best sinkers in baseball last year, not just because it had a 32% called strike rate when it went away, but when it was inside, the ideal contact rate, 26%. And this is a pitch he threw 46% of the time against right-handers. Unreal. So what I see is the changeup getting normalized and being better as a results pitch. It was still a very good movement pitch, stuff pitch and everything. So, yeah, I think that Logan Webb should rebound this year. Definitely higher than that $10 value had last year. He's going at 15. I'm in for that.
Okay, good. What about Zach Eflin? Now, there's a lot of warts on him. Injury could strike at any point. Strikeout rate is not great. But my argument for Zach Eflin is just the price. Like, he's shown to be somewhat consistent, and, you know, he's going for a mere $6 auction equivalent. He's worth 11 according to ATC projections. I mean, he doesn't have to do very much with his stuff. He doesn't have to get better to make up that value. And I find myself in the first 3 drafts that I'm drafting this year, I think I've got Zach Eflin in all of them, or 2 out of the 3, just because he's sitting there and I need a starting pitcher. And I'm like, I mean, it's already the 14th round. Like, what the hell? So what's your take on Eflin? Again, I don't see the upside with him, but I do see him earning the $6 at least for the year.
So I have Eflin in this tier that is, it's kind of what I call the cliff. I think is these guys that you add to your teams and you just don't drop them through the year. And it doesn't mean that they're necessarily amazing, but you don't really feel like you should drop them at any point. I think he's just going to get wins. He has such a low walk rate that, yeah, generally he's going to have a good enough whip as well. He's not really a 125
3.5 walk rate
risk
over the last 2 years, which is
right,
really
insane.
Elite.
Yeah. I think Eflin has had a lot of success by squeezing the most out of his arsenal as of late, and he really turned to curveballs a bit more last year, leading everything and just hoping that curve would work for him. I don't love it, but yeah, I understand at $6. I think it comes down to your team construction. Thinking about different leagues here, I'm just thinking about a general 5x5 standard that a lot of people are listening play on Yahoo with their office mates or whatever. And in those, you look at your team and yeah, you can have Zach Eflin, and that will probably help you. If it's in the 14th round, I imagine he's going around a lot of guys that can make a larger swing of the pendulum in your favor. It could also hurt you more than Eflin. If you want something that's a little more stable and you have something that you know you're going to have throughout the year, fine, go with Eflin. I think around that time in the 14th, I've either shifted to closers or other hitters because I've already invested the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th into getting starters, maybe even 12th. I think that's where the best value is in your general 12-team snake draft. So I haven't gone after Eflin yet because I've focused elsewhere. That said, if this is the team construction that you're going for, yeah, I think he is going to provide that $6 value.
Right,
that
and
you
by
have
the
in
way,
projection.
it's 14th round. That's in a 15 team.
15-teamer.
He's
Cool.
going to be even later in right.
I would think in a 15 you'd actually emphasize him more because that stable volume is way more appealing.
Yeah.
In a
Yes,
15-teamer.
I agree. As you shift to deeper leagues, you want the more stability versus the upside play. So whereas in 10-team leagues, he's maybe a no. In 12-team, he's a maybe, depending upon your style, as you say. 15, to me, he's a yes. Ruvain?
I'm lukewarm on him. I mean, he really figured out how to quote unquote pitch. Around 2022 and the second to last year with the Phillies. The last 3 seasons, his averages are 361, 109 whip, but he's only averaging 128 strikeouts. So a lot of times in these middle rounds, you should have someone who has a decent ERA and whip already. You should have somebody who has some strikeout potential. If you don't, I mean, you're not. I mean, in 2023 he had 186 strikeouts. Last year he had 134. So I don't know exactly, and I don't know what to expect when it comes to the strikeouts. Maybe you can get 130, 140 strikeouts from him. Where he's going, I guess it's okay. I don't have an issue with him, but I'm like Nick said, I may actually be looking for like my second reliever at that time, or maybe going after possibly a second catcher, so I don't have to go in the bottom of the pool for the catchers. But it'll all depend on your team construct, I think.
Yep, no doubt. The one thing I'm worried about is they are moving the fences in slightly in Baltimore, so maybe the ERA takes a little bit of a hit, so just caution for that. Moving on, let's do these in a pair. Tanner Bybee, Justin Steele. I know, Nick, you mentioned earlier that Justin Steele has that upside. I feel that too. I think that Tanner Bybee also has that upside. Projections are not showing him, actually not even that great. They're showing him as a bargain, but almost a 3.7 ERA. I think Tanner Bybee is nowhere near that. I would go sub 3.5 for him. At least that's what I think. But there's a bunch of projections that have him over. So I'm curious your thoughts about Bybee. But Justin Steele, for me, that's a nice bargain. I mean, I also bought him in a couple of leagues. Just a stabilizer in ERA, stabilizer in whip, and he's got that strikeout upside. He's throwing over his career about a strikeout an inning. So if he can, go up to about 175, 180 innings, we're talking 180 strikeouts. Last year he was out, but it wasn't a pitching relating issue. It was a hamstring or something from running. So I'm not that concerned with his injured past from the previous year. I like Steele even better than Bybee for the value. Your thoughts, Nick, on the pair?
Yeah, I actually have Justin Steele. Sorry, I have to say his name correctly. I have him at 21. And I've realized that this is way higher than consensus, so that's great. I don't make my rankings knowing consensus, and I think people might not realize that last year he hurt his hamstring on opening day. It was so painful. It was really frustrating to see. Needed some starts when he came back in May to get back into his groove, and then between May 27th and August 27th, when he started every 5 days, guess what? 2.45 ERA, 106 WHIP, 26% K rate, and a 7% walk rate across 103 innings. That's 17 starts. His ICR is amazing. He is a king of weak contact. He's always done this, Justin Steele. And what he's become even better at is manipulating the baseball. He doesn't have 2 pitches, a four-seamer and a slider. He has 4. He has a four-seamer that's straight, a four-seamer that is really a cutter with cut action that he manipulates. Then he has 2 different types of sliders. It's awesome. And I'm such a fan of this. I really think that the only reason he didn't finish the season strong is because he had elbow soreness, not a tear. Everything's fine. And I thought they were just going to shut him down. And he actually came back in 2 weeks. He's not coming back if he's still hurt. So Justin Steele to me is such a good get. This is a guy who knows how to pitch and also gets strikeouts. What? You just don't see this. He's primed for a 180 to 200 inning season. I'm not even kidding here.
Oh yeah,
I'm shocked that he's so down for so many people. And Tanner Bybee, I'm actually so curious as to why it's a 3.7 projection. 2.98 ERA, 3.47 ERA, and I'm even looking at xERA and FIP and xFIP and everything. And I get xFIP is not favorable because he's had a lower home run per fly ball rate. Okay, fine. Home run rates are weird. He hasn't had a massive home run problem. He does pitch in Cleveland, which maybe is actually why the home run per 9 went up.
high
in
strand
2024.
rate in his
You know,
career. He's had a lucky BABIP, so a little bit of that.
is it a lucky BABIP?
Slightly, yeah.
It is league average, actually.
Slightly below league
pretty
average.
much. Yeah, like 290 was league average last year for like the top 200 starting
285.
pitchers. He had a
So, yeah,
286.
slightly below.
So like, okay, but I would say that what Tanner Bybee does that honestly I wasn't into this time last year because he had a slider and changeup that I didn't really feel like he had a good hold on as far as his command, and a four-seamer that just isn't good. It's his worst pitch by far. And it's still a pitch that gets hit by right-handers and left-handers alike. However, he moved his slider to a cutter as well, and this cutter was phenomenal. So good against lefties and right-handers, and I love it. I mean, it's a 20% swing strike rate at both. He still has that slider, which is different movement and is also very effective. And despite the changeup being not a well-located pitch to lefties, still was effective against them. I imagine that this will just get better for him. He's in such a good situation in Cleveland. He threw 174 innings last year. I imagine it'll be more of the same, possibly better, as he adapts some more. I wouldn't be surprised if you actually start seeing Tanner Bybee starting to throw a sinker to right-handers inside more often because this four-seamer just gets hit too hard. And that, I think, could help him as well trying to figure out this piece or this puzzle because he's a Cleveland pitcher. It's by law. You got to have good secondaries and a bad fastball. It's the old story of Corey Kluber and Carlos Carrasco and others. So I'm a huge fan of this. I didn't think I would be, but I think that addition of the cutter is making me a lot more sold on Tanner Bybee in this upcoming year.
Love the organization, and ATC skew is positive 2.3. That's one of the highest starting pitchers their skew, and my research has shown that pitchers who exhibit projections volatility with a very positive skew like this will outperform their ATC expectations. So it's one of these things that ATC shows this, but if you look at the skew and the volatility metrics, he's even better. So I'm on board with him.
Okay,
Do you agree with me?
I'm going to be Mr. Little Negative here, just to give you the other side of the coin here. Tanner Bybee is a number one pitcher in Cleveland, which means that he's going to be going up and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have a fantasy roster, I don't think he's going to be your number. He may not be your number one. He may be your number two. Some teams may have him as number one, but he's going to go up against every other number one starter in the league. So is he going to get the same amount of wins as let's say a number two starter would, or a number three because you're not going off the same quality? Maybe. My second issue with
You really
Tanner
draft
Bybee,
like that?
what?
You really draft like that with?
I would definitely think about that because if he is their ace, he is gonna. I mean, opening day, you're gonna know who he's gonna pitch against. You know who's gonna pitch against 5 days after that. You can't necessarily draft like that. It's just something to think about. I'm not saying you should go by this, but he did jump 45 innings from the year before. That may be a little bit concerning for me because usually I don't know, Nick, you can talk about this a little bit about jumping from inning totals from one year to the next. Jumping 45 innings is kind of on the high side of where pitchers want to go to. Now the Indians were in a pennant race, so they kept him in there and they kept pitching and they didn't shut him down or anything like that. So that's why they did that. Now same thing with Justin Steele. Nick, you mentioned about the elbow thing. He had elbow tendonitis, left elbow tendonitis, and he only pitched twice since coming back, and he pitched a total of 7 innings. So I need to see him a little bit in spring training. Make sure he gets through like all the initial stuff okay. Make sure his first couple, even if it's an inning or two, get through that okay with no issues, and then I'll be okay.
By the way, he faces the Angels, the White Sox, and the Pirates in the month of April.
Okay, yeah, I understand that, but he's also going to face against every other team because that's the way baseball schedule is. They're going to face every other team, so he'll eventually face the number one starters in other teams also.
Well, okay, a few things quickly. I'm not concerned about the Steele thing because he did come back. If he wouldn't have pitched, in my view, if it actually was a problem. I remember looking into this because I thought that was really the main reason why his ADP was down, and I'm personally not concerned about Justin Steele. I am very curious. I'm with you, though. I think once he gets a clean bill and everything's fine in the spring, I think you will see his ADP rise. I'm not concerned about it. I'm willing to bet on that. It's an interesting idea, and it's not one that I haven't thought about before about, hey, you're an SP1. Man, I wish you were like an SP3 because then you get matchup better and you get more wins. Like you see this sometimes of like random Yankee starters, like their number 4 would have the most wins in the team. And you're like, what? Why is that? Well, I think it's a little different nowadays because of how teams manipulate their rotations. It's actually kind of common for teams not to put their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of spring. It happens all the time. And I mean, I remember last year, AJ Puck was the opening day starter for the Marlins. Like, what? Okay, I guess. Yeah, Garrett Crochet did it when out of the blue. We didn't really think he was going to do it, but I guess he just did it. And it's something that things get messed up all the time. Guys have a Monday off, and this team doesn't, and all of a sudden the cycles get weirder and weirder, right? So I wouldn't put too much stock into that. The one I could put stock into, not for a guy like Tanner Bybee, because it's, you're going to have him regardless. You're not going to think of moving him. But I am actually a big fan of looking at opening weekends and the first couple weeks for your fringe guys, the guys that you're taking as a flyer.
Yes.
And for Bybee, by the way, it is against Cole Reagans on opening day. So, that's interesting. In Kansas City, I'm still fine with that. And then it's the Padres after in San Diego. But then he gets a lot easier starts. But yeah. So when it comes to those fringe guys, there's two concepts. One, you can actually plan out, like, all right, I'm going to get this guy. Who are they facing? And like you're like, no, I don't want to start this guy in that first start. I'm just not going to do it. I don't want to start Reese Olson against the Dodgers in his first start of the year. I know that sounds weird for like 15 teamers, like you're still just going to have Reese Olson, but it does mean in my 12 teamers, I'm like, I'm going to be sitting on Reese Olson for like 10 days.
Because you can stream, and you can stream with your last pick and just say, okay,
right,
I would have streamed this, right.
Exactly. So that's not a good fun feeling, and really understand that for your Flyers of like, if I'm not going to start him in my first start, then I don't want him. The second is that you can get really sneaky with targeting pitchers who are going to be the first, second, or third starter of a rotation, who are not studs, because you can see them that opening weekend, and then if you don't like it, you can move on and add an SP 4 or 5 for a team before they've even started and other people have jumped on them. That's actually what I did. I drafted AJ Puck, as I mentioned last year. Did not work, but then I went and got Jack Flaherty before he made his first start, right? This was in a 12-team league, but that he wasn't actually, he was underneath, I think he was around ADP 300 or something last year, right? That is a strategy that can work very well. We don't really know them right now, but as we get into March, definitely pay attention to those things. You can find some sneaky value as well, and it will help a lot in that early strategy.
Good tactic.
What about the innings jump, the 45 innings from one year to the next?
Not concerned in the slightest. The way I see it with innings jumps, essentially once you hit 140, then it's like all reins are off. It happens constantly. Generally, actually, I've seen once 120 is hit by a younger pitcher, then they're just every 5 days the next year. We saw it with Logan Gilbert and George Kirby. We saw it with Alek Manoah. We saw it with Shane McClanahan around 120, 130. So 140 is the typical one after a Tommy John or so. After not pitching or being off for a while, you go up to 140, and then after that, you're good to go. That jump last year from Tanner Bybee is a very common one. In actuality, I've seen much larger ones from 140 to 180 or more. So I'm not concerned at all for Tanner Bybee.
I would go with Ruvain with a couple of health concerns, sort of. Brian Wu on the Mariners looks like an upside type pitcher, but injury issues. And also Drew Rasmussen, who's been fantastic when he's pitched, but really hasn't been able to stay healthy. Ruvain, are you in on any of those pitchers?
Well, Brian Wu is very interesting. He's a number 5 Mariner starter, and his ADP right now is 143. Is that right? I mean,
yeah,
that's crazy that all 5 Mariner starters are picked in the first 10 rounds in a 15-team league. It's crazy. Now he threw 135 innings overall last year. He was coming back. He's got some elbow risk. He's got some forearm issues that he's pitched through the last 2 years. I'm a little bit concerned with him. Not so much because I don't think the Mariners are going to push him. I think that if something comes up, they are going to rest him. He is in a number. I mean, we're not talking about ranking of starters for a team, but he's a number 5 starter. So you're not expecting him to throw 180 innings. You're not expecting him to throw even maybe 150 innings. But if you get 120 between 125 and 140 innings from him, that's fine. And he can have a couple of breaks here and there. I'm not too concerned, but it is a forearm and elbow issue that he's been dealing with. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. And as for Drew Rasmussen, I'm also a little bit nervous about him. He had the internal brace done 2 years ago. He pitched 80 innings last year. The one thing that I'm not concerned about is that his velocity was what he had before the injury, and the fact that his velocity was there. I mean, it's going to be 2.5 years almost removed since he had the procedure done. So he's going around pick 255 equivalent right now. This is a guy I would 100% take a risk on. This is an area where he's not going to be my ace. He's not going to be even my number 2. He's going to be like 3, 4 with upside. And being on the Rays know how to use him. And I think if the Rays are not in it, he may even get traded during the course of the season for a team that's competing just to get another arm out there.
Hey, Nick, before you answer the question, up in a 12-team NFBC 50s, it's the 20th round, and Drew Rasmussen is still available. Do I press the draft button now?
Well, okay. Rasmussen is a target of mine in 12 teamers for the exact reason of, like, I'm all about early decisions. I don't want a guy that I don't know if this was a good or bad move by the end of the year. I want to know, like, first or second start. And Rasmussen, you'll know before even the season starts, because is he a starter? Yes. You want him on your team. No, he's a reliever. You want him off your team. It's that simple. And I would take a chance on that. Absolutely. I also think that April roster spots are the most valuable roster spots of the year, because all these guys show up and you got to take a chance on them and they pan out for the entire year after. And, if Rasmussen doesn't work out, well, the benefit is that you now have an extra spot to go and get another lottery ticket.
This is an FBC 50s, so there's no cuts. It's a draft and hold type.
Oh, you're talking about draft and hold. Oh,
yeah.
Man. What does your gut say?
My gut says he is a yes, unless I have other priorities in the draft. So, like, if I said I have to take a pitcher now, then I'd say yes on him. But I might have I might have a different position.
What I'll say about Rasmussen is that whatever role they put him in, he'll be helpful.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Right. He's not going to be an unproductive pitcher. Is it just like a setup man? Is it a middle reliever? Like, that's not really as helpful, but I don't think he'll hurt in a draft and hold.
Well, being on the Rays, he'll probably get a save or two while he's out there also.
Yeah, right?
The ball boy will also get a save on the Rays.
Maybe he'll get a win because he's covering for a guy going 4.
Maybe.
That's true.
All right, Reynaldo Lopez, he was stellar last year. 199 ERA, 111 whip. He only pitched 136 innings. Reliever turned starter. Does he keep this up? Does he, he did have this ridiculous high strand rate. He had an 87% strand rate. That's not going to fly anymore, so the 199 won't fly. But he's going 11th round in 15 teams. Small bargain, according to ATC. I have not found myself drafting him at all, but he, did give me a little bit of interest. Are you in on him, Nick?
Not really. I would like to take a shot on it, but I just don't trust that the slider with its low strike rates is going to still be enough to do this for another year. It's that simple, really. The fastball can't do it all. It doesn't get whiffs enough. And a 57% strike rate on a slider as your number 2 just doesn't add up to a 7.7% walk rate. No. It's a very, very fortunate season for him. And I'm not in at anything close to replication of this. This is someone who I see how it goes in the beginning, and I'm okay dropping if it doesn't look good.
Moving?
So I have to agree. I'm not totally in on this. And talking about innings jumped, he was a reliever the year before, 66 innings, going to 135. But he pitches for the Braves. The Braves are pretty good when it comes to starting pitchers and doing this with them. I think they're almost on the same level as the Rays, and knowing when to push the right buttons with them. I think that with certain organizations, you may want to be more prone to draft a pitcher. But I don't know if he's going to be able to repeat what he did last year. What I think though is that it's interesting. His he's a reliever, and he's very similar to what Clay Holmes is. So maybe you can translate what Renato Lopez did, and maybe translate it to a pitcher like Clay Holmes, who can jump from those innings that he had to 100 and something innings, and maybe we can learn something from Lopez, where maybe we can get a cheap waiver wire pick on like Clay Holmes or something like that.
All right, moving on. Nestor Cortez and Ranger Suarez. Those are some, they've had success in the past in different years. Cortez was an $8 pitcher last year, and Suarez was a $10 pitcher last year. They've both had even more successful seasons in the past. They're cheap. I mean, if you're in a 15-team league, they're really towards the end. We bought, I think, one or both of them, actually, Ruvain, in the auction that we did for $2 a piece, so $4 for the pair. It's to me, it's just a value pick in the end. I don't know if there's any upside, too much upside in them anymore. So that's why I want to get Nick's take. But for the value, I don't think you can go wrong. It's just a question of opportunity cost. Could you pick somebody better at that spot? Well, what are your thoughts on Cortez and Suarez, Nick?
With Ranger Suarez, he's a guy in rhythm who looks great in rhythm. Man, everyone was like, he's an ace, Nick. He's an ace, AGA. I'm like, oh, God, but it's not going to last with Ranger Suarez. And then it didn't. He did it before when he had 12 starts at the end of the year. I believe it was 2022. And, that's just kind of who he is. So maybe you get really lucky and he's in rhythm again at the start of the year like it was last year. And that would be really cool. With Nestor Cortez, I do see a little bit more longevity throughout the entire season. It might surprise a lot of you to know that Nestor Cortez in the last 4 years has only had one season with a whip higher than 115, and that was in 2023. Yes, it was a 115 whip last year for Nestor Cortez with a 23% K rate and just a 5% walk rate. That's kind of wild. He's never quite made a ton of sense to me. The four-seamer, I think, overperforms a little bit, even though it does have a lot of vertical break. It's like 18, 19 inches of vert, which is really good, like 97th percentile. It's strange in that way. But the cutter and the sweeper and change are all kind of like, is it really that good? I don't know. And I do think the situation in Milwaukee is great for him. I really do. I think it's a case where he can just go out and pitch and they're not going to scrutinize him like the Yankees were. I really like this for Nestor Cortez. I think there's a bit of a sneaky play here for Cortez. I mean, 175 innings of a 115 whip, a 3.77 ERA, and a 23% K rate is really beneficial for your deeper leagues. So I kind of dig this with Nestor Cortez.
Yeah, and I'll say that Suarez, you mentioned the good whip. Suarez has had 2 seasons of at least a 1.33 whip in the past couple seasons, and last year 1.2. So there is more of a risk on the whip. I'll agree that Cortez is the better pick than Suarez. You agree, Ruben?
Yeah, I just think Nick saw my notes here, and my note next to Cortez is team philosophy, because the Yankees always try to make the pitcher into what they want to be, and Milwaukee usually goes the way the pitcher is built and plays to their strength more. I think I'm getting that right. I'm not 100% certain, but that's from what I've heard and what I've seen. So Cortez actually is a little bit sneaky just because of where you're getting him. And as for Ranger Suarez last year, first half ERA 2.76, second half 5.65 with a career, like you mentioned, of 3.42. This late in the game, you may want to go with Suarez over Cortez only because if you may get more wins because he's on a better team. Cortez, I don't know how many wins. I mean, Milwaukee's in the NL Central, so he may get wins also playing against the Cardinals lineup and playing against the Pirates and everything like that. But Ranger Suarez is on a good team, and he usually goes about literally 5 innings almost every single time. I had him on one of my teams last year. He go 5 innings, and then they take him out. He go 5 1/3, and the second they see any problems, they start to take him out. So that's maybe one of the reasons why his ERA and WHIP was the way it was, because the Phillies put in middle relievers who like a Matt Stram who'd go 2 innings and gobble up his runners, and Suarez would get lucky like that.
Interesting. Last pitcher or so, I guess very quickly, you get guys like Max Scherzer, who just appears to be a bargain here. 109 innings pitch projection, like a $7 value going for like nothing. I'll even throw in like Clayton Kershaw, who probably won't even pitch for the first month or two. He's showing a couple dollars value. I mean, I can't pick any of these pitchers. I mean, Ruvain, are you picking any of these guys? I mean, we understand these are Hall of Fame pitchers, but future Hall of Fame pitchers, but I can't do it. You?
No, not at all. I can't believe Toronto paid that much for Max Scherzer. I mean, last year he pitched 5 games of 5 innings or more. What does that do for you? He was hurt. He's only getting older. He's going to be in his age 41 season this year. His K rate fell under 10 last year for the first time for a season since 2011. His fastball velocity was down. And the shoulder issue, he didn't have surgery. He's just a year older. What makes you think he's going to get any better? And Kershaw, I believe he had 2 surgeries in the offseason. I mean, what are you going to get out of them? You're going to get 4 or 5 innings, and you're getting the name of the player on your team. But otherwise, I don't see much value here.
And an NFBC with no IL, you certainly can't draft Kershaw at all, even on your
and
bench.
how can you stream him if he's going to only go 4 innings and maybe 5 innings?
Yeah. Do you have anything that you see in any of these pitchers, Nick, to pick them?
I mean, you can't take Kershaw. I can't believe that he's still a thing. It's really strange thinking about Kershaw these days like this because he was just the pitcher of our generation. Don't go him for fantasy. I don't even know when the Dodgers think he'll actually do anything. With Scherzer's kind of interesting because I feel like Scherzer's the kind of guy that the second that he can't be effective, he's just retiring. Like, he's not going to just pitch a 5 ERA every day just to get his dollar. Like, he doesn't want that, you know? So if he can't compete and be successful, he doesn't want to be on that mound. So in that sense, if he's not feeling it and not there, he's gone. But if he is out there, it kind of tells me that he has something still left in the tank that can be beneficial. And even last year, it was still a 115 whip. I mean, he's not walking batters. He's not having like a 9+ hit per 9. There could be if he was hurt a bit,
and he's essentially free, by the way. He's essentially
right.
Like
the biggest negative though is, let's say that Scherzer is inside this rotation as like the SP3 or 4 for the Blue Jays, right? That means he will have to get the Orioles and then the Mets and then the Red Sox and then Atlanta. I don't want this. The only weak opponent that the Blue Jays get in the first month or so are the Nationals, but that's only for the SP 1 and 5, 1, 2, and 5 to get, and I don't think that Scherzer will be any of those. I can't really. It's not really like a safe flyer because I take Max Scherzer. I just want to see what he does, but I don't want to start him, and that breaks my rule, so I can't do it.
Nick, before the podcast started, we were talking, and I had just a trivia question that I had mentioned to you. We were talking about these older pitchers. So my question to you before the podcast was this: which pitcher currently holds the record for which active pitcher currently holds the career most home runs for a starting pitcher?
Is it really Scherzer?
Kit. It's not Max Scherzer, no.
Oh,
but it is an older
right.
pitcher. And
not Ohtani, right? We're not going to pick Ohtani.
Not using Ohtani. Not using Ohtani. Technically active pitcher. That should give you
technically active. I mean, I already guessed Kershaw, I think, in the before the show. A technically active pitcher? Oh, I don't know. I don't want to waste any more time.
I have to say technically active. I'll give you a hint. Okay, how's this hint? Mason Saunders.
Bumgarner?
Oh, is he still technically? Well, the thing is, I thought of Bumgarner before, but I thought he wasn't around anymore.
He never announced his retirement, so technically he's still considered.
That would have been
active.
my first guess.
That's not a hint, Ruvain. That's actually giving you the answer.
Well, you have to know who Mason Saunders are. You know, the people who are new into the fantasy don't know who Mason Saunders are because Madison Bumgarner hasn't been relevant for the past couple of years.
I just mentioned him in an article.
Do you have number 2?
By that name.
Yes, I have number 2.
Okay, did we say number 2?
You did not say number 2.
Okay,
but
good.
Hint for number 2. Ariel, you mentioned number 3.
DeGrom?
No, no, not DeGrom. Actually, I'm sorry. Nick, you mentioned number 3.
Okay. Kershaw.
Not Kershaw.
Oh, man. Okay, wait. Give me a hint for number 2.
Number 2, this is, again, I don't know how many people are going to remember him so well because he hasn't been really fantasy relevant. But he always comes to spring training with a decreased velocity.
Zach Greinke.
Zach Greinke.
But he's retired.
He's fully retired now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's
Did
retired.
he announce his retirement? Because I
Oh,
did.
man.
I'm looking him
Okay. All right. All right.
and you mentioned Michael Lorenzen.
Oh, I
He's
Oh,
did.
number
Lorenzen was too.
yes.
Look at that.
Lorenzen is number
Pretty good.
3, and Syndergaard
Okay,
is
I feel
number
like that's
4.
the real correct answer
Syndergaard,
because he's
yeah.
pitching in spring training this this year.
Yes. Yes. So
Hey,
there you go.
we usually do undervalued pitchers, but I do want to ask you just on two guys that ATC shows as overvalued, just to get your take. One of
Sure.
them is Jacob deGrom, who I would not touch with a 10-foot pole. I just don't have any confidence he's going to make those innings to be warranting like a second or third round pick. And the other is Corbin Burns. He's going as like the number 7 or 8 starting pitcher. I have him as like the number 16 starting pitcher. Just a huge ERA hit going to the Diamondbacks. Still very good. SP16 is nothing to shy about, but just way overpriced for where he's going. Any thoughts on them as to what's going on there?
So, okay, with DeGrom, he's really interesting because again, in 12 teamers, I'm very much of like impact when you pitch is a great thing, and then you get the replacement too. And there's a real interesting argument to be made about DeGrom's elbow being healthier than ever, or healthiest it's been in
Okay.
a long time.
Healthier than ever. I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, no, healthier than it's been in a long time. And if you don't
Best shape
recall,
of his career.
he was a workhorse until 2021, when he then had essentially precursor to Tommy John injury that took him out for a bit, and then he had another injury, and then he finally got Tommy John. And that's really like the track record of DeGrom not going long in a season is that. That's the entire story. So to see that DeGrom came back and was so good in those final 3 games, like the PLV metrics, that's our pitch quantifier, was like, yeah, this is off the chart, like amazing DeGrom again. So I've already seen him do it. I've already seen him. It's not like we're wondering if he's healthy. He is healthy.
Well, we've seen him healthy in spring training and then kablooey. We've seen that.
I understand that. What I'm getting at is that this is a repaired elbow.
Gotcha.
This is not one that is a precursor to Tommy John and then precursor
Second Tommy John,
missed
though.
time.
Yes, second Tommy
I understand.
John,
So second Tommy
not
John
great
is an
track
interesting
record.
thing. And now that I actually talked to Stephen Lyman about this, who's worked at HSS, who talking to him about it, it's pretty much just like it's a lower chance of being the same stuff when you come back. And I get that completely. Like, is your elbow still? Are you able to, do all the things? The fact that DeGrom did, he has. It's not like we're wondering if he has it. He does. The second Tommy John thing is less about, well, now he's going. This elbow isn't going to be around for 50 innings. It's like you can only get a certain amount. No, it's more about the quality of the player after the second Tommy John. And yeah, this is. I'm not saying you're going to take DeGrom for 3 years or something, but I don't know. Like, if you're going to say he's going to get 50 innings or something, I don't think that's the case for DeGrom. I like it. I'm not saying I'm taking a guy in the first 3 rounds, though. I don't want to do that.
Over
I
under
wanna take hitters.
120 innings for DeGrom. Over under.
I'll go under.
Oh, that's a good spot. That's a good spot. I like that. I'd say that we're very lucky if we get more than 100. If we get over 120, everybody is ecstatic, right? I think that the probability of it is better than what people think it is.
Okay. And Burns?
So Burns, what's interesting about Burns is that his cutter was what has been the real regression the last year and a half. And I say year and a half because that pitch came back at the end of August, and in September he finally had the good cutter with proper drop to it. And what that meant is that all of a sudden now he's getting low with the cutter because he's throwing the same spot, but it's getting more drop and it's more effective. And this is the guy that actually had a foundation of this amazing cutter and then was able to utilize the slider and curve and change to great effect. So we finally got it. And then you send him over to Arizona, which is a really good place to pitch. We've seen the impact of that defense for a while. Yes, Christian Walker is now gone, which second time I actually mentioned Christian Walker and his defense. Still, good defense behind him. Good situation in Arizona. They're going to let him fly. I'm a fan of Corbin Burns. He's that really safe ratio guy with a good amount of wins and a 25% plus strikeout rate, I think, because I think the cutter is going to be what we saw at the end of the year. Because it's clearly that he made a tweak to it and it's better, and I don't think that just goes away.
All right, well, I'm gonna bump him up a little bit. I probably won't be drafting him because I'm pretty far away in terms of projections versus market, but good to know. All right, let's do the injury update. Ruvain, what do you got for starting pitchers?
All right, we got a couple of them. A couple we already mentioned, but I want to go through them anyway. We'll start with the Twins' Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan had an MRI this past November, which showed a complete resolution of his shoulder strain that ended his season in 2024. He had a grade 2 teres major strain, and from August 9th until the end of the season, he was out. He's expected to be ready for spring training, so he should be fully healthy and good to go. Another Brewers pitcher, Brandon Woodruff. He is supposed to face hitters this Friday. It's going to be the first time since undergoing surgery in 2023 for his shoulder that he's going to be facing pitchers. So it's very interesting. We don't know when he's going to be ready, so we have to see exactly how he pans out with this, and going forward, we'll see how that works. Spencer Strider, we mentioned him earlier. He said he could make one Grapefruit League appearance this spring and be ready for a season debut by late April. Now, this goes against what the Braves said initially when they said he may not be back until sometime in May. Or even June. So what does that mean? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. I have to mention a White Sox pitcher just once because they do pitch. Drew Thorpe. He hopes for mound work this coming week. He had surgery to remove a bone spur in his right elbow and had a couple setbacks. But he should be healthy, and if he's good to go, he should be part of that White Sox rotation if you want to give that a go. You mentioned the Dodgers rotation. Gavin Stone. He had right shoulder surgery in October. He's done for the year. Don't draft him for this year. Same with Braxton Garrett. He had a UCL revision done in December. He's done for the year. Now, we mentioned Clayton Kershaw. He actually began the throwing progression. He's coming back from the surgeries from the toe, and we'll see how that works. We mentioned him before, so I'm not going to go too much into him. Alec Marsh, another Royal, and we mentioned a whole bunch of Royals already this episode. He's recovering from right shoulder tightness that could delay when he'll first face pitchers. So if you're drafting him later on in leagues, just take that into account. DL Hall, former Brewer prospect. He was recovering from a lat strain and won't throw for a couple of weeks. This was reported yesterday, actually. So we don't know where he's going to go. So again, if you're thinking about drafting him, if you want to hold him, that's fine. But if you don't have room, you may not want to. Orioles, Kyle Bradish. He began a throwing program back in December. We don't know exactly where he's going to be. So, if you're draft and hold, you want to hold on to him, that's something you may want to do. This came out today. Another Orioles pitcher, Trevor Rogers. He's unlikely to be ready for opening day because he suffered a right knee subluxation in January. We'll see how that goes. He's still throwing and he's able to, long throw, but we don't know how far away he's going to be. We mentioned Tyler Glass now. He said at the Dodgers camp, whatever they had, and when all the players came, that he had an MRI done and it came back clean and he's had a normal offseason. This is what he said, quote, "I've been throwing normal, throwing bullpens. I feel as good as I've ever felt." That's what he said. We'll see if he's even ready to possibly pitch the opening series against the Cubs in Tokyo.
All right. Well, that was a fantastic episode. I mean, Nick, your insights into the pitching is just something that is very different from the way that I do things and just looking at the numbers, but you really know the inside out. That's why I'm so interested in listening to you, and it's amazing having you on the show, really, to talk about pitching from literally a pitch detail. So thank you so much for coming, and why don't you just tell everybody what's going on with you and where we can see everything and read everything and listen to Nick Pollack.
Well, I appreciate you so much for saying that. I mean, really, Ariel, you've done incredible stuff here, and I absolutely love your projections, of course, every year, and you've taught me a ton inside of this as well, so thank you so much for all of that and bringing me on here today. This year we are actually launching our own live draft assistant web app, which is really cool inside of your browser. It's a really nice, sleek thing, and also then having a fantasy manager for your teams that is essentially a dashboard for all your fantasy teams that has all of our PLV metrics and widgets for StatCast data for your fantasy leagues. We're launching that this year, so check it out with PL Pro. You can use promo code podcast to sign up today for 15% off. We're really looking forward to that, and boy, I just want to get to the start of the season. There is so much stuff I gotta get done, and once we get to the start of the season, we can kick up our feet, enjoy our teams, and just watch some baseball. Amazing stuff. And Nick has really assembled a whole community, if you can think of it that way, of people who work from at Pitcher List, and just it's everything you do for the industry. So it's not just one guy just doing something on his own. He's really enabling everybody else and just helping the community in so many ways. So thanks so much for that, Nick. Well, thank you, Aaron. That's really kind of you.
All right, you're welcome. And Ruvain, what about you?
You can follow me on Twitter X at MLB Injury Guru, where I'll tweet out injury updates as they come. We're getting a lot of pitcher updates now, as pitchers and catchers have started for almost every single team at this point. You can also catch my in-season article on Rotoballer discussing all the injuries. Next man up as well.
And I'm Ariel Cohen. You can see my work over at Fangraphs, over at Rotoballer. I had an article on Fangraphs last week, and I will next week on Rotoballer. Check them out. You can follow me on Twitter at ATCNY. ATC projections are up on various sites. Check them out as well. And you can listen to us every week here on the Beat the Shift podcast, now nominated for FSWA Award of Podcast of the Year. Listen to us every week. Beat the Shift podcast with me and Ruvain. All right, once again, thank you so much to Nick Pollack of Pitcher List. And from all of us here at Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.